Autumn, 1944. The world is at a tipping point, and for the women marching in single file through a Texas sunrise, the war has shrunk to the scrape of boots over dry gravel, to the rattle of the bus that had brought them here, to this barbed horizon where the American flag snagged and flapped on the cool wind. There is silence but for the engine dying away, and the odd, far-off call of a meadowlark. Not a prison in the way they had been warned, a death camp, a penance for the defeated, but something stranger, held between terror and disbelief. Anna Hoffman, once a Luftnachrichtenhelferin, a signal operator outside Bremen, stares at her chipped shoes. Her hands tremble, not just from the memory of bomb raid nights, but from 2 days' hunger, and the rumor whispered on the train, "They will feed us, but only so we can work for them." She glances at her companions. Greta, pale and raw-eyed, Marta with the broken wrist, Fraulein Stahl who never cries, each locked in private calculations of shame and dread. At the guardhouse, a GI corporal checks names against a list. The American words bounce meaninglessly. Anna watches, but cannot understand. She has not seen the inside of a kitchen with eggs and butter since 1942. A smell is rising from across the wire, thick, urgent, warm. It rolls over them like a memory of childhood Sundays, a stew of beef fat, coffee, something sweet like corn. For weeks, the women had lived on watery cabbage soup, dark bread so old its crust drew blood from swollen gums, and the endless, choking monotony of ersatz coffee, little more than ground acorns disguised as food. Rations in Germany have vanished into the smoke of ruined cities and shattered rail lines. Even soldiers at the front, they heard, now starve on black bread and salt. Now, as they are ushered through into the registration tent, the first pang is not of hunger but almost fear, a suspicion that such plenty must carry a price. Anna's mother had never spoken of mercy from the enemy, only sedimented the old warnings. If captured, expect nothing. They hate us. You are not a person to them. But the American sergeant is elderly and sun-browned, his greeting oddly gentle, almost distracted. You'll be wanting to wash up first. They are led into a barracks where linen smells of soap, where a nurse with red hair speaks clumsy, smiling German and checks Marta's bruised wrist. Their uniforms are traded for pale blue prisoners' dresses stenciled PW, freshly laundered. Then, the mess hall. Long tables fill the barracks. Rows of American prisoners, men, most barely older than themselves, nod as the new women enter, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but not malice. Anna is last in line, and at the serving counter she stares amazed at what is offered. A thick slice of beef, browned and glistening. Mashed potatoes, a cloud of butter sinking atop. Sweet cornbread, greens, and a mug of coffee steaming into the bright air. There are no guards waving rifles to hurry the line, only a cook, a tall, tired man with a kind voice who calls her miss and spoons on a little extra. "This isn't a trick?" Greta whispers, eyes wide. Their translator, quiet and careful, nods. They must feed us what they feed their own by law. The fork shakes in Anna's hand as she cuts the steak. The first bite is almost painful. She chews, then stops, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, real meat dissolves against her tongue, savory and rich. Not a ration, not the gray sinew of horse, not a handful of beans, but true abundance. For a moment, her eyes close. Around the table, sobs begin to build, hushed at first, then rising, until several of the women have to put down their utensils, covering faces slick with tears. It is not just the hunger that breaks them, nor the sudden, unexpected mercy. It is the unbearable reminder of all that has been lost, the memory of home, of gentle kitchens, of peace, suddenly served on a plate. Anna thinks of her mother, still somewhere in the ruins of Bremen, and almost cannot swallow. A guard observes with a nervous glance, then turns away, embarrassed perhaps to have become an accidental witness to such helpless gratitude. "Is this America, or is it only a dream?" Marta whispers. Later, as the day cools and the Texas sunset turns gold against the barbed wire, Anna sits outside the barracks, the taste of steak still lingering on her tongue, more haunting than any punishment she had imagined. But the night brings no easy sleep. Around her the barracks settle into uneasy silence, broken only by the faint tapping of a guard's boots and a wind that smells faintly still of mesquite smoke and distant rain. With their hunger sated, new tensions begin. Rumors of forced labor, of cold interrogations, of letters never reaching home. The women stare at the ceiling, listening for trains that never come, For now, at least, the war has paused. But in its place, a different fear grows, a dread not of starvation or violence, but of strange kindness, a mercy that reopens wounds every ration had tried to numb. The second week unspooled with a rhythm that was both strange and steady. By dawn, the German women learned to wake not to the thud of bombs, but to the crow of a rooster and the squeak of bunk beds. Dust motes floated in private sunlight across the barracks, not clouds of plaster from an air raid, but reminders of some distant, forgiving order. Yet, beneath that surface, beneath the taste of steak still haunting their tongues, lay uncertainty that grew with every passing day. Camp Swift sat deep in central Texas, nearly a world away from Bremen, Vienna, or the ruins of Cologne. Barbed wire ringed the prairie, but beyond its limits stretched a landscape so vast, so indifferent, escape seemed both impossible and pointless. Inside, a code of discipline structured the hours. Breakfast at 6, work assignments at 7, twice daily counts in the yard. The war was still out there, invisible but ever present, and the broadcast static from the guardroom radio was a wound that wouldn't close. Every morning, the women lined up for inspection, blue uniforms crisp once more, hands clutching work gloves or notepads. They were split into squads, some destined for the laundry, others for kitchen duty, sewing rooms, or, the luckiest perhaps, cattle herding on a nearby ranch, a job that meant sun, prairie wind, and fleeting glimpses of freedom. The Americans called each by a number and, eventually, a name. Surprising themselves, the women soon answered in English. With each day, the memory of arrival faded, replaced by smaller, persistent shocks. The first mail delivery, official camp stationery, 1 page only, brought a sea of weeping and laughter so intense it overwhelmed even the guards. News from Germany filtered in, sharp and raw. Berlin surrounded, Dresden burned, the Reich unraveling. Letters home censored and slow, but words pressed so hard into the page they nearly tore the sheets. We are alive. We are well fed. Yes, it is America. Yet the abundance felt precariously balanced, even absurd. Food never ran short, but trust was scarce. Some women whispered that the good treatment was a trap, that, as the armies collapsed, their captors might turn, their luck might vanish overnight. Rumors spread as quickly as the scent of roasting beef. Forced labor in southern fields, interrogations by men in black armbands, lists read out by Red Cross visitors. When a new batch of prisoners arrived, exhausted, staring at the food with suspicion, a silent lesson passed. For some, a kindness as profound as decent soap in the showers left them shaken, convinced it was all prelude to punishment. Beneath formal discipline, invisible currents ran strong. There were those among the guards, boys from Iowa, men with children of their own, who would risk quiet conversations, a handful of candy passed beneath a table, a fleeting kindness disguised as routine. Anna recounted, years later, one Sunday morning when a Texan cook produced not steak but something stranger, barbecued pork, baked sweets, and fresh oranges. The guards watched the Germans eat, faces unreadable, then shrugged as if to say, even here in war, some things, like a Sunday meal, should not be forgotten. But absence lingered too. No word from home for Marta in 8 weeks. Greta's eyes grew hollow as she realized the family farm in Pomerania had fallen into Soviet hands. News of the front arrived in whispers, bold headlines, silent tears at lights out. At night, in the beds lined wall to wall, the women replayed scenes from earlier captivity. The march of defeat, the endless propaganda insisting America was a nation of monsters. Each day lived in Texas made the lies sting deeper. Then the rules changed. The Allies landed deeper in Normandy and Vienna fell. Prisoners were sent farther afield as agricultural laborers. Work details grew tougher, discipline stricter. Any incident, a missing tool, a careless word, brought punishment. Anna watched, frightened, as a friend was forced into solitary for a week after being accused of stealing an egg. Yet even punishment came with its own strange mercy. A camp doctor cared for her, and when she emerged, she was thinner but unharmed. Trust and suspicion now danced in the mess hall and fields in equal measure. Some women volunteered for every job, hoping to earn favor, to ease the gnawing fear of the unknown. Others withdrew, convinced the American mask would slip at the first sign of defeat. One night, during a summer thunderstorm, Greta confided she missed not Germany, but the certainty of what to fear and what to hope for. Red Cross visitors became a lifeline, and so did the rules of Geneva. a phrase that meant little at first, but soon grew sacred. The Americans, bound by law as much as by habit, fed, housed, and disciplined with a peculiar form of justice, at once rigid and humane, never quite intimate, never truly cruel. And always, the war advanced outside the wire. German units collapsed, field gray uniforms turned to shreds, and the world's axis shifted west. Some guards wept hearing the news, others cheered. The women felt only numbness, as if watching history slip from their fingertips, replaced by evenings of crickets and memories of better days. The axis of war snapped quietly in the spring of 1945. In Camp Swift and across Texas, a sense of inevitable unraveling swept across the barracks as wireless sets crackled out the final collapse of Nazi Germany. Berlin surrounded, Hitler dead, and the flags of surrender flying over shattered cities. A world that had once seemed solid, now undone by the invisible machinery of logistics, radio signals, and fuel lines that stretched from these strange, sunlit prairies all the way to the gutted heart of Europe. Anna Hoffman kept the news clutched tight, weeping for a homeland now nothing but absence. In the camp's muddy mess hall, rumors moved faster than truth itself. Some said the homecoming would be punishment, that Allied judges waited in ruined courtrooms to condemn even those who had only handled typewriters. Others stared at the rich meals in the prairie dusk and wondered how hunger and defeat now tasted of abundance. Work did not slow. Cotton harvest, cattle drives, kitchen labors all demanded strength as the world crumbled outside. For the German women, the collapse of official power brought no sudden freedom, only a deepening uncertainty. Army trucks arrived and departed in irregular convoys, their dust trailing over silent fields. Names vanished from the roll calls, replaced by new faces with eyes glazed by loss or blank expectation. March brought a new order. Prisoners were to be identified, interrogated, classified for repatriation. Some women, like Greta, faced American intelligence officers with trembling hands, answering for work done, documents stamped, radio signals relayed. Others, like Marta, were assigned to new labor details, estranged from old camp friendships by suspicion or the mark of discipline. Yet even then, the mechanics of captivity showed their unbending industrial logic. American camp authorities, pressed by bureaucracy and supply chains, continued to enforce the Geneva Conventions with unyielding restraint. Food remained plentiful. Letters home continued, now full of desperate apologies and cautious hope. Bunkhouses echoed with nightly brushes against rumor, some camps closing, others shifting prisoners for harvest work farther north, the border of captivity always moving. For some, the collapse brought moments of quiet revelation. Lisa Lotto, a former radio operator, watched a guard help an injured woman from the infirmary and wondered if this strange, bitter mercy meant the world could be built differently, without arrogance or the easy currency of cruelty. Ranchers thanked their German laborers with silver dollars and cigarettes, small tokens that seemed immense against the backdrop of total defeat. But not all collapse was gentle. In June, military officials arrived at Camp Swift to tally prisoners for return to Europe. Names were read aloud, bunkhouses emptied. Tears came easily, and goodbyes, both to Americans and fellow Germans, were as complicated as any battle. The journey home was an ordeal. Train rides across endless prairies, dusty transfer points, rough Atlantic crossings, and crowded troop ships. When Anna's group reached Bremerhaven, the ruins confirmed what the mess hall rumors had always warned. Streets replaced by rivers of rubble, homes dissolved into absence, families scattered or gone. Yet there were small American aid packages handed out before disembarkation: soap, canned meat, chilled chocolate bars. As Anna stepped into a world that seemed less real than Texas, she carried the memory of mercy learned where she had least expected it. Some stayed in America, hired as translators, nurses, or tutors. Their English was rugged, an amalgam of slang learned from cowboys and cooks, but the words carried weight in the new world. Anna found work with the Allied occupation authorities, her accent strange and her stories stranger, yet people listened. Her tale was a bridge, proof that the machinery of war could break, but dignity might survive. Across the camp, morale had split. Younger women talked of return, of reconciliation, of using their experience for peace, not as atonement, but as living proof that not all wounds destroyed the possibility of forgiveness. The collapse of empire, and the end of captivity was not only a loss, but a passage, from helplessness to possibility, from hunger to the strange fullness of an unknown homecoming. When the war's thunder finally faded, the silence was not peace. It was a reckoning that stretched far beyond the barbed boundaries of Texas. On the last week before transport, the German women gathered their meager belongings: blue dresses stamped PW, journals filled with memories, the odd gift from an American cook, a faded photograph, a cowboy hat, a bar of rationed chocolate. Some stood together under the vast open sky, unsure whether to laugh or weep, each haunted by the weight of return. The trucks rolled out at dawn, tires carving lines through red dust. Inside, the prisoners sat shoulder to shoulder, eyes turned to the horizon, uncertainty pressing down. Conversation was quiet, deliberate, heavy with last words. For many, the journey back to Germany was colder, harder, and lonelier than the voyage to America had ever been. News reports and Red Cross officers spoke of homes destroyed, families dispersed, cities vanished beneath ash and grief. The country they came back to was not the one they remembered, nor the one they had left as soldiers, clerks, and helpers. But woven through devastation was something else, a fragile new understanding, carved out in kitchens and cattle sheds, in gestures of trust and kindness neither side had anticipated. Lisa Lotto, now a translator for the Allied occupation, remembered riding horses beneath the Texas sun, remembered the first meal, the clean water, the moment cruelty did not come. Even as Bremerhaven greeted her with ice and ruin, she carried in her accent the grit and warmth of Texas, the rough slang of men who called her partner, the words that rebuilt bridges where war had torn them down. Others tried to tell their stories. In speeches to German women, in notes for American officers, in classrooms and church halls, they described a paradox, a captivity built not on humiliation, but survival, dignity, and the rebirth of hope. Sometimes these stories fell on deaf ears. Sometimes they planted seeds, a letter home, a new friendship, a refusal to pass along hatred. More than a few returned to America, drawn by the memory of ranches, space, and surprising kindness. They became nurses, workers, mothers, and neighbors, shaped forever by the reckoning of captivity. Yet most simply carried the lessons forward. They remembered not only the fear and the distance, but also that fleeting radical moment when strangers sat side by side, breaking bread as equals. The bad memories did not vanish. The ruins remained. But in the fabric of daily life, in the letters and songs and small mercies, something had been washed clean. As one woman wrote of her journey home, "It is true, the war devoured everything. Yet in the ashes, I brought back more than defeat. I learned what it is to be human again. I learned that kindness, even offered to the defeated, endures beyond the last battle." And so, as the cattle trucks rattled away from the camp and the Texas horizon filled once more with quiet dust, the hardest realization settled across them. Not that they had lost, but that in losing, they had gained something that the empires of fire and metal had never offered: a fragile dignity. An understanding that the line between prisoner and host, defeated and victor, is crossed not by violence, but by acts of simple, unguarded generosity. The silence that followed was not peace, only the sound of history turning its page.